and welcoming everyone to this week's episode of Craze's Corners. Championship matchups are just around the corner, so you're going to want to make sure you stay tuned. We're going to be talking about some guys we expect to exceed fantasy football projections for this week, and one guy that we think is going to kind of, he's going to fall a little bit short. Maybe you don't want to start this guy, or if you do, you definitely want to make sure you don't have your expectations set super high. First, we're going to get into a couple of news stories, though. Tua Tagovailoa is not going to be playing this week, and it doesn't look likely that he plays next week as well with another concussion. Definitely not a good look for the Dolphins and the league as he finished last week's game with the concussion. They didn't take him out. He wasn't checked. So this is definitely something, second time this year this has happened. Some controversial concussions around Tua. So we'll watch out, but I think they'll stay safe with him. They can't have him suffer another concussion in week 18. So I doubt we see him play. Teddy Bridgewater is going to be starting for them. The next story, we're sticking with quarterbacks here. Derek Carr has been moved to not even to the bench. Derek Carr is going to be inactive for the last 2 games of the Raiders season. Jarrett Stidham has been named their starting quarterback. They're looking to see what they have in Stidham. Derek Carr just wasn't quite working out for them. He has almost no guaranteed money. It'd be about $5 million dead cap if they cut him within 4 days of the Super Bowl. So look for him to be cut if they can't find a trade partner, and they'd have to get that worked out quickly. So cutting is the most likely option at this point. And the third story, something we know Broncos fans have been hoping for, and that is that Nathaniel Hackett has been fired. The interesting thing here is not only for this year, for the rest of this year, but for next year. What does this offense look like? Can we have more faith in Russell Wilson? I want to know what you guys think. So you can let me know what you guys think using the media app. You can download it on the Google Play and App Store. You can check it out. You can answer all the questions that you want. You can post questions to ask me, ask other creators. We can also post questions to ask you guys so we can see your responses. We can respond to the ones that we like. So download the app. You can check it out, Google Play and App Store. Answer that question. How will Russell Wilson and this offense do next year? Now we can welcome in our guest tonight, Will. Normally we got Jeff and Zach in here, just me and Will today. Welcome in.
Hey, man. Well, I guess we're going to have to carry some extra weight today, huh?
We definitely are. We have both Zach and Jeff's picks, so we can talk about them a little bit. Let you guys know what we think about their picks. So we're going to still give you 4 people's opinions on this. We're going to start it off here. My guy who finished as the RB1 last week seemingly came out of nowhere, had high expectations going into the year, and a guy who's done nothing but disappoint since, and that's Cam Akers. You look at what he did last week, obviously that was their best game of the year, and that was his best game of the year. He was on the field for the most he's been in a long time, 75%, ended up with 23 carries, 118 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's had 5 targets over the past 2 weeks as well, which is something that's definitely intriguing. And they go up against the Chargers, who suck against the running games. When I look at this, I see an offense that kind of seems to be coming into its own. Baker Mayfield looks good as their starting quarterback so far. I would never count on Baker Mayfield. But for the running game, it seems to have opened things up, and Cam Akers seems to be getting back to what everyone thought he was going to be at the beginning of the season, what we saw from him in previous years. So I like what I see from Cam Akers. On Sleeper, he's projected around 10 PPR fantasy points. And I can see him definitely exceeding that as he has both the past 2 weeks, 13 and 34.7 last week. So Cam Akers is a guy that I think you can be fully confident putting in your starting lineup this week as your RB2. And you're going to get 15, 16 points at him against a bad Chargers defense. Will, what do you think about Cam Akers?
As a Cam Akers owner, heavy Cam Akers owner, one of my playoffs, I didn't play him. Put him on the bench and cost me the game. Yeah. Because I just didn't feel like, I still wasn't sure with the Rams. Like, what are they doing? And that's what I get. Survived the whole season. He was a high draft pick for me. Survived the whole season. Got to the semifinals, and I didn't play him. Sorry, Cam. I should have trusted my gut.
Yeah, definitely. Cam Akers, he went off last week. And there was a lot of people in your position, though. You just didn't start him. I started him in our Dynasty League because I literally have no other options.
Yes.
And I won. Points. I put up the most points.
170 points, right?
Yeah. Easy. 178 points was the most points that anyone. I was in, I was not in the playoffs anymore in that league, but it's still nice to see, and especially in a Dynasty League, that this guy still has what it takes. I don't have to worry about trying to replace him. I feel like you can go into next year with him as your RB2 and feel okay about it. He's still super young, 23 years old, so I don't think there's anything that way to worry about. So I'm very, very encouraged from what I've seen the past 2 weeks with Cam Akers. Love to see it. Will, we're going to move on to your next guy who kind of ties in with one of the guys that Jeff gave us, so we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But Will, who would you like to introduce as one of your guys that's going to exceed expectations?
Viking fans, don't hate me. You just got a feeling Aaron Rodgers is going to have a good game this week. It's kind of prime time, not prime time, but they moved it to 4:00 Eastern slot, and the nation's going to be watching. I know I just saw before I gave my players earlier in the day, but I just saw before I got on for the show that it was he was sat out today with a knee injury, and then Watson. I'm not sure Watson's going to play now, based on the injury report. But I think if Aaron plays, he's going to have a good game. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I haven't looked at the weather forecast. I didn't think it was going to be snowing or anything. So if the weather's good, I think that's going to be a shootout. And if I had Rodgers, this would be the week I would play him.
Yeah, looking at the weather forecast here on Sleeper, we got a couple games that are sunny. One is in Kansas City, one in Tampa Bay, and the only other sunny game, according to Sleeper, is the Green Bay, Minnesota game. So should be a good weather game for them, especially. Jeff's guy, he wanted to bring up, as you said, Christian Watson not likely to play at this point of our recording, which is Wednesday. Romeo Doubs is the guy that Jeff's been super high on all year. And if Christian Watson doesn't play, I would, Romeo Doubs might exceed his projections. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable starting Romeo Doubs in fantasy football championship.
In the championship, if it's your third or fourth wide receiver,
maybe, yeah.
And it's a difference between 6 points and 10 points. Yeah, that Viking defense has been suspect to big plays, big chunk plays. Now, not touchdowns, but big chunk plays. I just Dobbs, he still dropped. Like last week, he had that horrible drop. It still makes me nervous. But I could see, if I have a Packer wide receiver, well, at least a Packer wide receiver, if Watson's not playing, it does kind of, for fantasy owners, if you're not a Watson owner, it sucks. If you're a Watson owner, it sucks. If you have Lazard, Cobb, or Romeo Doubs, it kind of solidifies that those three guys are going to be on the field. But I think what's his name at tight end would be maybe a bigger receiving threat this week, or even the running backs.
Yeah.
This is a big game by Aaron Jones. We'll see.
Yeah. I feel Aaron Rodgers should have a good game against the Vikings. We know he likes to do that. Struggled in week 1 this year against the Vikings, so he'll want to come out here and prove, especially in front of the home crowd, that he wants to prove he still got it. So I like that pick, but I wouldn't feel comfortable starting Romeo Doubs unless you said he's like you're in a deep league, 3 wide receivers, 2 flex type situation where maybe Doubs sneaks in. Because I expect him, as you said, probably around 10 points. When it's all said and done. He's projected for around 7. So for this whole exceeding expectations, I think he will exceed that 7 mark in PPR. Yeah. But not.
But is it enough to say?
And it's not enough for me to throw him out there. We'll move on to my next guy. First guy was running back. Second guy is going to be a running back, a guy I've talked about all season. Number 1 running back for his team. I said in our predictions show at midseason, we talked about a couple guys who are going to be on a lot of fantasy winning rosters. Tyler Allgeier, man, he is the number 1 running back for the Atlanta Falcons. We knew it was coming. Last week, he was on the field 60% of the snaps, second highest all year. He had 18 carries for 74 yards. He had 5 targets with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. That's something that's especially important in PPR. He ended up with 15 points last week, and he had 22 points the week before. So those are two good numbers, and those were against the Saints and the Ravens, who have been historically so far this year good against the run. You open them up to a team like the Cardinals, who just let Tampa Bay run all over them. And, Tampa Bay's not good at running the football. They're one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. So this is a game that should bode well for Tyler Allgeier. And as I said, I've been confident in him to be the running back one. I'm not a fan of Cordell Patterson. So this is my final opportunity that Tyler Allgeier has kind of taken over. He is their starting running back, and I've liked what I've seen from him so far. So I'm confident playing him as my RB2 as well. If you're in the fantasy football championships, and he might be on a lot of these championship rosters. What do you think, Will? You in on starting Tyler Allgeier this week?
So I was between him and the person I'm going to have as my next player. So I'm glad you picked it because I agree with you. I think the Arizona defense, like it's the rats jumping off a sinking ship. I mean, who announces their retirement 2 weeks before the end of the season? And you want to make sure it's clear to everybody, I'm leaving this crap.
Yep.
I'm out.
Yeah, there's talks about him. Well, he already announced his retirement. Talks about Cliff Kingsbury, walking away from football. There was talks before about him getting fired. So who really knows what's happening? Kyler Murray, a quarterback, recovering from his injury. Big mess in Arizona right now. I would not want to be a part of it. That is for sure. And I am quite happy I'm not a Cardinals fan.
Yeah. I have a funny feeling they'll put in the same amount of effort that the Broncos did the other day.
Yeah. Very possible.
The
Broncos
not get hurt. Let them go.
Yep, embarrassing game for them. Letting Baker score 51 on you. Can't look good, especially after everything that Baker's been through this year, last year. I would not want to be that team, and it got their coach fired. So maybe Cliff Kingsbury's gone.
Not only fired, but got the defensive coordinator saying, I don't want to be the interim head coach.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
I wouldn't want to be either. Yeah, you might as well. He's worried. He's going somewhere next year anyways. It's not like he's going to win this job. So you might as well just stick with what you're doing.
Side note, Vikings, are you paying attention? That would be a great defensive coordinator to add into the mix next year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple.
They're going to clear that coaching staff.
Yeah, there's a couple interesting coaching situations I think we're going to see. This whole Sean Payton debacle.
Ooh.
We'll see what happens there. He'll probably end up somewhere. There's talks about him, Denver.
Cowboys, I'm telling you, if Cowboys don't make it to the Super Bowl, I think Jerry will. If Jerry thinks Peyton's back in, he won't hesitate.
Yeah, there's talks about Peyton returning to the Saints, signing Tom Brady, and then all of a sudden they think they can do something. I'm not 100% sure. There's talks about him going to the Raiders and then teaming up with Tom Brady and bringing him and Gronk back to Las Vegas. There's a bunch of different rumors going around right now.
That's the Charger rumor too.
Yeah, the LA rumors, the Chargers or the Rams if Sean McVay steps away, which people have also been saying Sean McVay is just going to step away from coaching too. So there's a lot of variables to come in this coaching situation. It's going to be interesting to see where these pieces fall. But a coach that has stepped in so far good this year and has his team's made strides, and that's the Jacksonville Jaguars, which leads in perfectly to your next player, Will. Who do you want to talk about?
Etienne, baby. I just, I know Texans have been playing better, but I just think Jacksonville is, it seems like the last couple of weeks they kind of just got it together. Like everything's starting to click. The players kind of know what they're doing, and there's trust on who's going to be where. And I just think he's going to have a bigger game than we think this week.
Yeah, I mean, Texans are a good rushing matchup because if you can get up early, you can just kind of coast through. He's had 17, 19, 22 carries the past 3 games, so those numbers are continuing to go up. Something you like. He struggled against the Titans in Dallas a little bit, but at the end of that Dallas game, he did end up looking good. Got it up against 2 tough matchups, and they played the Jets last week, another tough matchup, and he was still able to put up 12 and 14 points the past 2 weeks. So when you look at those numbers, it's definitely something that's promising going up against a bad rushing defense, a team that you can hope to get up early against. I like Travis.
I think he could hit about 18, 20 points this week. If Jacksonville gets up on him and just keeps running the ball.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And we're going to stay with Jacksonville here for my next guy. A guy who I think is going to fall a little bit short of his 14 points that he's projected to get. It has to be Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk, a guy that we've been high on since the offseason. He's currently sitting at the wide receiver 14. Kind of all we expect him to have a really good year, and he has. But Houston is not a good matchup. They played them earlier the year. He had 2 points, only 1 catch. He played last week against the Jets. He only had 5 points when it comes to PPR scoring. Zay Jones has been more heavily involved. Evan Ingram been heavily involved as we run down the stretch here. Travis Etienne even out of the backfield. They just seem to be spreading the ball around a little bit more and going against a team that has been good against the pass because for most of the time they're up. So they're not throwing the ball all over the Houston Texans defense. Christian Kirk's not a guy I want in my starting lineup this week. Going into the Fantasy Football Championships, I wouldn't feel comfortable expecting Christian Kirk to put up wide receiver 2 numbers.
He had 6 targets last week, 3 receptions, 22 yards.
Yeah, 6 points in PPR.
Right. Etienne had the same, better yardage, but he was 3 for 3, and Ingram was 7 out of 8.
Ingram's been great.
And
I think this game is going to be run, throw the ball to Ingram, run again.
Yeah.
Which is why I wouldn't feel comfortable starting Christian Kirk or really Zay Jones this week, even though as much as I love Trevor Lawrence,
if the Jaguars are throwing in that game, something went wrong.
Yeah, definitely something went wrong. We saw the Texans win again last week against the Titans, though, so they're not quite in as good a situation as the Jaguars are here. The Jaguars are getting hot at the right time. The Titans were not, so I'm not looking forward to starting the wide receivers in general for the Jaguars this week. I think you should stay away and pivot to some other options if you can. Will, who is your guy you expect to kind of fall short of his expectations this week?
Tyreek Hill. It could be any of the Miami wide receivers, to be honest with you.
All of them.
The Miami wide receiver core is and it's not just so much the change in quarterback as it is the psyche of the team. Like that has to be, if you're on that roster, you have to be thinking, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Why? What? Because do we really believe Tua will be back this year at all?
No.
Right? I don't see it. So, it has to be a deflator, emotional down. That game last week, that fourth quarter has to hurt. Even before it came out, should have been in concussion protocol. You had to feel like we had that game and we blew it.
They did. They really did have that game.
Right? And so I don't know. So I'll pick Tyreek Hill, but my gut is that, I would stay away from all their wide receivers. Now, if I'm a Wilson owner, is he healthy? Their running back?
Wilson? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably go heavy on Wilson.
Yeah, I think they'll have to rely on the running game between Mostert and Wilson. One of them will probably have a good game. Just is kind of hard to pick which one it actually will be. But yeah, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I think, instantly take a step back this week. Changing quarterbacks never good. Both of them have the ability to take a short gain and break it. And I think that's really what you're going to be relying on here if you want to get above 15 points is that they're going to have to break. Like we saw Jalen Waddle do last week, he's going to have to break an 80-yard touchdown if you want him to be fantasy relevant. So it's
and the
I would bench Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle because I really don't think you can. But I think you have to temper your expectations.
Yeah. It's not a benching decision. I'm still playing them if I have them. I just don't. If I was expecting maybe a 25-point game, 20-point game, you better have somebody else on that roster that can make up. Because I think they both go down. If they were your wide receiver number ones, realistically, it could be wide receiver number 3 by game time.
Yeah, definitely. As you said, you can start them, and you definitely need to. Just hold back your expectations, and you have to hope that your team can make it up somewhere else. Now we've talked about our guys. We have Jeff's guys that he picked. We talked about one already, Romeo Doubs. So we're going to stick with his next guy that he thinks is going to exceed expectations and a guy that he thinks is going to fall a little bit short. They happen to be on the same team. We talked about them a little bit earlier in the news segment. We're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders here. Ooh. Jeff thinks that Josh Jacobs is going to exceed expectations. He's currently set at 16 points projected And he thinks Davante Adams is going to fall short of his expectations without Derek Carr throwing him the ball, which I definitely think you got to expect. He doesn't. Davante Adams was hyper-targeted by Derek Carr with that connection they had, and that's what made him one of the best wide receivers for fantasy so far this year. With Jarrett Stidham throwing in the ball, I'm not really sure I want to even be starting Davante Adams this week. And that really says a lot because there's definitely some better options at the
moment. And think about that. Like we just said, you can't take Hill or Waddle out of your roster.
Mm-hmm.
Adams, who I know you and I disagree, but we both agree he's top 5 wide receiver fantasy. The fact that we're saying that, and I agree with you, you may have to actually consider taking him out of your roster in the championship week.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Against San Francisco, who's been a great matchup for wide receivers. You look at his last 2 games, he's put up 6 and 3 points in PPR with Derek Carr. He's had 9 targets in each of those games. They just haven't amounted to anything. The targets can't go up with Jarrett Stidham. They're going to run the ball as much as they can with Josh Jacobs. But I mean, Josh Jacobs, do I think he's going to exceed 16 points? No.
I think it's going to be down.
I think it's going to be down, too. I think this whole offense takes a step back with Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. They're going up against the 49ers, who are a great rushing defense. So that's not.
So why is Carr inactive?
They don't want him to be a distraction. So they have agreed that Derek Carr is going to step away from the team. He's not going to be he's not going to be at practices. They're going to let the team ride with Jarrett Stidham and Chase Gerbers as the backup. So unless something happens to one of them, don't expect to see Derek Carr in a Raiders uniform. And I don't even know if he's going to be on the sideline at the games.
Whew. I wouldn't want to be that Raider team.
No. What do they do now? They just brought in this new coach who no one likes anymore. They're going to be like the Broncos, one and done.
They'll have to trade Davante Adams. They have no choice. There's no way Davante's going to.
He refused to talk about the situation today.
Yeah, in the offseason, he's going to demand a trade. Well, they'll get a nice haul for him.
Yeah,
they'll get a couple first-round picks.
We'll see. Wayne, they traded him for a first and a second, so I don't know if they can get more for him now than they did.
Maybe the Cowboys.
Well, we'll have to see exactly. But if the Cowboys want to get Sean Payton, they'll have to trade a couple picks away to get Payton.
Yeah.
So then they won't really have the capital to trade away to get Davante Adams. It's an interesting prospect dynasty-wise, but he really went to Las Vegas to be with Derek Carr. And without Carr there, it's like, well, what's holding him there now? He doesn't want to be on a losing team.
Yeah.
He wants to be the number one. He wants to be the best wide receiver in the NFL, and I don't think this Raiders team is going to let him live up to that next year.
And if he does demand a trade, he's going to be very particular about what team he goes to with the right quarterback.
Yeah, he is. The only way I could see him staying is if they end up bringing in Tom Brady.
Rodgers.
Definitely Rodgers.
And maybe this is a hint. Maybe 4 months from now, we'll look back and realize that this was the precursor to they are already talking to the Packers about Rodgers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they could be that. They could bring in Brady if they really wanted to. They've talked about that before when he was a free agent. Maybe that's the direction they go. He knows Josh McDaniel's system already.
Yeah.
So he got that familiarity if he can get Gronk back. Obviously, he doesn't look very good in Tampa so far this year. So maybe that would entice Davante Adams to want to stay. But outside of that, there really isn't any quarterbacks that are just going to jump out and make him like, oh, yeah, I want to be here. So I think it is
I would think Baltimore would seriously think about a couple significant picks for Davante.
I would think so. But do you really want to have your run first offense and invest that into a wide receiver? They have to pay Lamar.
Yeah. It'll be a great offseason.
Rough. It's rough.
It's going to be an interesting offseason. There's going to be so much movement. I don't think just the quarterback realignment is going to be crazy.
Yeah, quarterbacks, coaches, and then after that all falls into place, the rest of the team has to be pretty much rebuilt. When you look at it, it's going to be an interesting offseason, kind of what we saw last year where there's just so much change happening. Lots of teams in the draft are going to be trying to get some quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Be an interesting offseason for sure. But one team that we think is going to stay mostly consistent will be the Kansas City Chiefs, which leads us into Zach's first guy here that he thinks is going to exceed expectations. And that appears to be their number one running back in Jerrick McKinnon, former Viking. So I know you are a fan of Jerrick McKinnon.
I am.
30 points, 30
Jet.
points, 12 points. So he's been fairly good. Currently, they have him projected for around 14 in a matchup against this Denver team that maybe comes out and plays good this week. I wouldn't really count on that. He's been a PPR monster, so this is definitely the situation where you would want to play him if you're in PPR. If you're in standard, definitely not as enticing to play him. He's definitely not in that conversation. No. But PPR, I think you can be confident playing him. He just gets all those dump-off passes out of the backfield. He's on the field about 50% of the time, splitting with Pacheco. But Jerrick McKinnon gets the passing work. And he seems to be able to score through the air when it comes down to that, 3rd and goal from the 5. They're like, all right, this is Jerrick McKinnon's play. So that's something that's
all those owners that hoarded every running back on Kansas City's roster waiting to see who emerged. Congratulations. Yeah. At the right time of the season, too. My only fear about that is if Denver decides, we don't really care, and this game's over like 28-0 first quarter, 21-0 first quarter, I don't think you'll see the Chiefs players that far into the game.
No, but is Jerrick McKinnon really the guy that they pull, or do they just run Jerrick McKinnon?
I think he's been too valuable the last couple of weeks.
He has been, but I think they'll still continue to run the ball even if they get up early. And Denver, maybe they come out inspired this week. Maybe they just look like the Denver we've seen. Their defense has been okay.
Have you ever seen a coach turn down the possibility to be an interim head coach?
I have not.
That front office, that headquarters must be a hot mess. Because that defense, not only did he turn him down, it was public. It got out. Hey, I don't want to be interim head coach. I'll just focus on the defense. Like, you ain't gonna put this stink on me. Okay.
Yeah, he wants to make sure he can get a job somewhere next year.
Well, maybe. I wonder on that point real quick. I wonder also too if we know the defense has been having issues with the offense.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he feels. I wonder if some of that resentment is coming from him towards Russell and the offense, and he doesn't want to deal with Russell.
Definitely could be.
If he's head coach, I don't want to deal with you, dude. I don't want to be on the sidelines talking to you.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be either. The way that he's been playing, especially with the way that the Broncos defense, they've been playing good. Yeah, just hasn't really worked out for them. Outside of that, their offense has been pretty much stagnant. So we'll see. I think they could, perform a little better, but I would definitely temper your expectations there. And then Zach also brought up Ceedee Lamb as a guy who should exceed his expectations, currently projected at 19 fantasy points. 19 is definitely a little high for me to exceed, just based on projections to exceed that. He's only done that a few times this year. They're going up against a good matchup in the Titans, but they could get up very early, and Ceedee Lamb might not see the second half.
I'm with you on that. I think actually the Cowboys are going to get up early, and then they're going to pound the ball.
Yeah, we've seen this before. They'll get up 35-0 in the first half, and then they're done.
That's it.
It's Cooper Rush's team, and it won't even be Zeke and Tony Pollard that's running out the ball. It'll be Malik Davis.
Yeah.
So
I don't even think that game's going to be close.
It shouldn't be. Malik Willis is terrible.
Horrible.
He's one of the worst looking quarterbacks we've seen in a while.
That rookie class is not looking good at all. Quarterbacks.
No, Pickett looks, bottom tier starting quarterback, maybe. Yeah. Willis does not look good. We haven't seen Corral, so really you can't say what he was going to be. Ritter looks okay.
There was a lot of hype on some of those guys. Oh, they're not valued. They're not.
Yeah.
Willis, right? People were talking about him as a first-round draft pick.
People were talking about him as a second overall. He's not lived up to that at all. People are like, oh, you're going to have to trade up into the top 5 if you want to get Malik Willis. And he fell. And he fell for reasons, apparently, because he's not looked good. He can't throw the ball. And,
That interception at the end of the game was horrible.
This is the Thursday night game. The Titans don't have Derrick Henry, so by the time you're watching this, you'll probably have already seen this, and you'll be like, yeah, the CeeDee Lamb, he maybe scored, and that's really what you're going to be counting on if you've got CeeDee Lamb, because I don't think it's going to be volume, because I don't think they're going to be on the field throwing the ball enough to have that volume. You start him, obviously. He's CeeDee Lamb. You're not benching CeeDee Lamb, but I don't expect him to play 4 quarters of football.
I think the Titans can hope for bad weather and run the option the whole game.
That's pretty much what they've been doing.
Right.
That's all they can do.
Dude, they can't throw the ball.
No, and without Derrick Henry, I mean, Malik Willis hurt Derrick Henry more than like you need the guy like Tannehill who gets to run the play action to keep a little bit of pressure off Derrick Henry. But with Malik Willis in there, he takes away carries and he stacks the box.
Well, and for all of us that have always been leery of Derrick Henry fall off, maybe because we thought he was getting older and injured, it looks like the undoing of Derrick Henry is the quarterback situation in Tennessee.
Yeah, because I don't even know how hurt Derrick Henry is right now. I don't think he wants to play.
I don't think he wants to play either. I think they know the season's over.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they make the playoffs, it's over. So why
risk it?
Why risk it? I wouldn't risk him.
No, especially a guy like him. He's getting up there in age. You want to reduce
the season. Will probably be over after this week, right? Because if Jacksonville wins.
No, this game means nothing because they play each other next week. So as Doug Peterson says, there is no such thing as a meaningless game, but this is about as close as it gets for both these teams. It means nothing.
Right, because even if Jacksonville wins, they're 8-8 and Tennessee 7-9.
Unless there's a tie between them week 18, these games mean nothing. The only way I think they come into effect is if there's a tie week 18. But
I don't know. I don't know about CeeDee Lamb. I still think the Cowboys wide receivers and now Hilton, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Hilton's going to be taking receptions from somebody.
Mm-hmm. Gallup had his best game of the year last week. Hilton made that big play on the 3rd and 30.
What's the weather supposed to be in Tennessee?
In Tennessee, we got rain. I don't know exactly how cold, but sleeper shows
or anything.
Rain, no.
Yeah.
But
Amazon probably thought, wow, this is going to be a great game late in the season.
Yeah, definitely not. This will be a Dallas runaway fast. I probably won't even watch the second half. Now you're gonna be watching this on Friday and being like, well, these guys were either really right or
really wrong. I have no idea what they're talking
about this game. Because I think it's gonna be a blowout. It'll be done fast. We got one more guy here we're going to talk about, a guy who's been fairly consistent over the past couple of weeks, and that's going to be Najee Harris, a guy who Zach thinks is not going to hit his 12 points projected. He's been consistent around the 13, 14, 15 over the past 3 weeks. Baltimore, not a great matchup for the running back position.
Yeah,
this team's pretty much done. I don't understand how this game got flexed into the Sunday night slot. I feel like there are much better games with more playoff implications that they could have thrown into the Sunday night game. Like even the Panthers-Bucks game is going to be a good game. But whoever wins this game has the inside track to win the division and make the playoffs. The Ravens, Lamar Jackson probably is not even going to play. You got the Steelers with Kenny Pickett. I don't know how this game got flexed, but I don't love Najee Harris. You still start him if you have him, obviously. He's gotten you this far. He's probably a shoe-in for 10 points. I don't really think he's going to get any lower than 10 points, but don't expect him to be the guy that's going to go out there and score 40 points and win you your matchup this week. 10 points. You're going to get what you get from Najee Harris. Don't expect anything else. You feel the same?
I'm just trying to think what I'm going to do Sunday night now.
I don't understand. Like I said, the Panthers game has playoff implications. Whoever wins that game, they're in. As far as they have to win next week too, but that's a big.
The Saints-Eagle game would have been a better game to flex into Sunday night.
Yeah, even the Vikings-Packers game.
Yeah, CBS wasn't going to let that go.
No,
That's the game. That's the game they protected.
That game could have been flexed. I mean, you look at the Battle of LA, maybe the Seahawks game. Any of these games, I'm looking down the thing, probably would have been better than the Ravens. Like, I wanted the Panthers game to be flexed in because if the Panthers win next week, or I guess this upcoming week, we just need to beat the Saints next week and we're in. If the Bucks win this week, they're in. So
every Cowboy fan is rooting for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, probably.
I don't want to play you guys.
No,
teams get hot. Teams get hot at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the running game has really been what's carried us so far. Sam Darnold has been efficient. He hasn't, been the guy who if we go into the playoffs and we put the ball in his position where he needs to make the play, we're going to lose the game. But if we can just make him be the Kirk Cousins of, a couple of years ago where he just has to be okay.
The ball off.
But let's make him Case Keenum.
Yeah.
From when the Vikings made that playoff run. I think that's really the best comparison. He just has to be competent, efficient. He's gone 4 games without a turnover, longest streak of his career. Let's keep that going. Just be efficient, run the ball. That's really if he can do that and the Panthers can stay, I think they can win this week. And the Dallas has to come to them. Most likely that's
right. And that's if I'm Dallas, I'd rather go to Tampa Bay than Carolina.
Yeah, Tampa Bay, other than the last 2 minutes of a game, Tampa Bay doesn't seem like they can do anything. The only time they can do something is when Tom Brady's in the 2-minute offense and he decides to call all the plays himself because he knows what he's doing. Brian Leftwich seems to have just fallen off a cliff. Not sure what he's doing.
Yeah, I think the if we're gonna have honest conversation. And it may be hurting Leftwich, and it hurts the enemy in Kansas City. Being the OC of an offense with a Hall of Fame quarterback, right? And this is Hackett's, right? You got hired because of Rodgers' resume, not because of his. And the fact that he got hired over some of these other coaches who had a much better. Yeah. How do you end up not hiring Dan Quinn in that situation?
They wanted someone
Kevin O'Connell
to build the offense around Russ, and I guess Hackett was the only one who was willing to do that. Yeah, you look at the Bucks. To me, they've looked good in the last 2 minutes of the past 3 weeks. And outside of that, they've looked like a horrible team. Their offense can't get anything going. It just, I don't know. When Tom Brady starts calling the plays at the line of scrimmage, they seem to be okay because he still knows better than Byron Leftwich how to read the defense and know what's coming.
But
especially when they can't
be that close against Arizona, right? Wasn't that Arizona? Right? No. It shouldn't be coming down to the last. You shouldn't be. Well, where were they down?
They were down 16-6.
Right, down 10
to Trace McSorley.
Right, come on.
And the Panthers' running game better than what they face against the Cardinals, and Sam Darnold is better than Trace McSorley when it comes to throwing the ball. So if they play like they did the first 3 quarters of that game against the Panthers, that game could easily be what we saw the Panthers-Lions game.
Do the Detroit,
Yeah, and I think that's what the Panthers are going to do. This team wants to play for Steve Wilks. They brought in Josh Norman this week. He's not going to be their starting corner. He's there for the culture.
Yeah.
All the guys who played for Steve Wilks before, they said, this is the guy they wanted. This is the guy that should have been given the job before.
Yeah.
They were embarrassed what happened to him in Arizona. And I think this is really his time. If they win this game, Steve Wilks is going to be our head coach next year. Yeah. I have full confidence that I don't really have confidence in David Tepper that he's going to make that decision, but I think the players are going to make sure all the family.
If he comes back and brings you guys to the playoffs, I think the PR.
Yeah,
you have to.
I think Tepper's smart enough that way, but I think the players they're not going to let anything happen to Steve Wilks. Even all former players, Steve Smith, everyone who's ever played for Steve Wilks knows he's the guy that the players want to play for. If they can get to the playoffs this week. They have to win 2 weeks in a row still, but They've been playing like that. They knew last week they had to win or they were out, and they put up franchise record in yards, franchise record in rushing yards, and ran all over a team that was supposed to beat them by 7. So, Panthers underdogs again.
It's funny how all that Detroit talk went away in 1 week.
Yeah. Their defense was never good, though, so I don't really know.
Right.
Like, if you
and the offense, I mean, it's kind of like, there's a reason why the Rams let Jerrick go.
Yeah.
For a much older quarterback. For pretty much turned into a 1-year rental.
Yeah. And if you look back at the stats of Goff put up last week, you're like, well, this guy had 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. It must have been a good game. Those 300 yards and 3 touchdowns came in the last 10 minutes of the game when the Panthers had already given up because they were up by so much. It was dominated by the Panthers in the first half. And they were just breaking plays, and I think they can do that against this Tampa Bay defense. I just have to hope I get the game up here in Canada, or I'll have to pirate it off somewhere.
Yeah, I would hope they'd show it. That's one of the better games this weekend.
Yeah,
like it should have
been Sunday night game.
It would have been a great Sunday night game.
Yeah, I don't understand. You got Tom Brady. The media loves Tom Brady. Why can't he be the Sunday night game?
Did Fox protect it? Is that what happened?
Could have been, I guess. Or maybe, because if Olsen could be doing that game.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Well, especially since I didn't realize CBS had the Viking-Packer game. Should be a Fox game. So Fox didn't have a whole lot to protect.
So they were like, might as well give Olsen the Panthers game. We'll protect that. CBS like, okay, we're going to protect the Packers game. And I guess that Ravens game was kind of the last one they left.
Who was supposed to play Sunday night? Was it Arizona?
I don't think so. I think it was
the Rams and Chargers?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. That might be a better game than people think now, too.
It could, yeah. The Chargers just been underwhelming.
Right. People talk about the Vikings in 1-score games. I mean, the Chargers, it's like they deliberately play like, hey, we're going to play to the best the other team can score. That's the limit. Can't win big.
No, that was the Steelers for a while under Mike Tomlin. They would always, just play to the ability of the other team, and then just at the end of the game they win it. And then they move on. We'll see. We got a lot coming. We want to end the show here, though. I hope you guys listen to our advice, and I hope you bring home some fantasy football championships. I want to thank Will for being here. We got to talk about Zach and Jeff's picks. Sorry they couldn't make it, but you can check me out at Pro Football Craze on Instagram. You can check out the media app, all new version. You can go answer that question I asked earlier. What do you think about the Broncos going into next year? There's a lot of conversation going on around about. I saw on Twitter today, one of the bigger NFL guys on Twitter was calling it the worst trade in NFL history.
No longer Herschel Walker.
And I don't think it is the Russell Wilson trade is the worst trade in NFL history. I still think it's a little too early. Give him another year with a different system. Let's see. I still think the Herschel Walker trade was
But the Vikings went to the playoffs with Herschel Walker.
Yeah.
Right? Let's not it was lopsided, but it wasn't like the Vikings got a dud.
Mm-hmm.
They traded for him and they went to the playoffs that year. And
the trade to me is going to be determined on what the Seahawks do with these picks. Because if the Seahawks blunder on these picks, then it's going to be, oh well.
Yeah, but then I think you got to hindsight just a little bit that where are they? They're like the 4th pick now? Is that the pick again?
High. It's a high pick.
So for a team that's desperately been searching for a quarterback,
yeah.
I think you have to weigh who it's also you're right, it's who Seattle uses, but also then you have to look at who was on the board at 4 that they could have picked had they had the pick.
Yeah, but if 20 years from now, we look back on this trade, we're not going to be talking about who was on the board of those picks. It's going to be who did the Seahawks pick.
But if let's say a quarterback goes at 5, that becomes a Hall of Famer.
Well, I think the Seahawks are going to go quarterbacks.
Yeah, the Eagles still get crap for passing Jefferson.
Yeah.
So people are going to remember who was there at 4. Because Seattle's probably going to take the quarterback at 4.
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah, I just gotta hope that he turns out to be what they need him to. They got a decent situation there though, because they can sit him behind Geno for at least half a year,
Yeah.
and then from there, Geno's a guy you can learn from. He's not,
Yeah.
your superstar quarterback. He's dealt with this. This is my situation with Sam Darnold. We signed Matt Corral this offseason.
Yeah.
It was like Sam Darnold's the guy who's been through it all. He's seen the lows, about as low as you can possibly get, and he's had some, some good performances. Geno's turned this around. If you're gonna have a rookie learn from anyone, a guy who's dealt with all this adversity and has won over the locker room, that's the guy you want. Showing your rookie how to do it. So I think Seattle is in a good position there. But like I said, we'll end the show here. Thanks for joining, Will, and thank you for everyone who watched. Let us know if you win your championships using the media app as well. All right, so go check that out. Download it, Google Play, and the App Store.
All right, everybody.